I'm a grateful believer in Jesus. I'm forever free from pornography and sexual addiction, and my name is Richard. Hey, y'all. So my favorite step of the 12 steps is step 12. It says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we carry this message of hope and healing to others and practice these principles in all our affairs. It really feels good to be able to share the hope I have found with others and carry the message of Jesus to people with whom I used to commit a multitude of sins. 12-step culture and following Jesus are similar in that they're not just break glass in case of emergency methods. They aim to change the way we do life on a daily basis. They are not behavior changes. They are lifestyle changes. There are some issues in my life where I have processed what happened through the lens of one of the 12 steps or through a teaching of Jesus, and I didn't realize it until after I had taken time to reflect. The story you're about to hear is filled with racial situations that are uncomfortable to talk about and have the potential to divide immature people. However, this story is not about the people who committed the wrongs, nor is it about the harms that were caused. It's about the God who can heal any harms we face. As you hear this story, be patient when you hear something that makes you feel uncomfortable, and know that healing is on the way. So, let's start. Oreo, white boy, you think you're better than us. You're not like the rest of them. Uncle Tom, you speak well for a black boy. If you ever heard any of these growing up, I feel you, and I'm sorry. I was born in El Dorado, Arkansas. My parents were divorced shortly after I was born. I initially lived with my mom and my stepdad. My hometown had a deep history of racial separation and tension. I grew up hearing expressions from family members like, if she can't use your comb, don't bring her home. Or, white people don't want us to have nothing. This was my first taste of racism. Know that when I speak of racism, I mean that any thoughts or actions that discriminate against a person or a group of people based on race. My family often said racist things. However, those things were based on real life experiences. They had been mistreated and discriminated against because of the color of their skin. The problem was many of them allowed their experiences with a small population of people to affect how they felt about a whole race of people. Despite being divorced, my parents always agreed on several things. The importance of education was one of them. When I was a kid on the black side of town, if you presented yourself as well-educated or articulate, other kids would call you white. So you could imagine the conflict I experienced within myself being a black kid called white boy on the side of town where white people didn't want us to have anything. Was I a bad person just for being who I was? My identity crisis started early. I was also exposed to pornography around the same time. Unlike race issues, pornography did not immediately take hold in my life, though it did sow some seeds that would later give rise to my most formidable addiction. When I was in third grade, I lived to move with my dad and stepmom in California. I might have been articulate, but I still had a southern accent that I didn't know existed until I moved to California. Overall, I would say California was good for me because Central California, where we live, was racially and culturally diverse. I learned to live at peace with various people. I liked it. For the next few years, I would bounce back and forth between parents, one living in Arkansas, one living in California. Each move required that I adapt a little bit more of who I was to match my environment. I had to be a little bit more black when I was in Arkansas and be a little bit more white when I was in other places. Then came my junior high years, which took place in a small town called Enid, Oklahoma. During those angsty teen years, I felt like nothing I could do was good enough for my parents. I made good grades, I avoided drugs and alcohol, I wasn't having sex at that point. I was also involved in many extracurricular activities. Despite this, I never felt I could make my parents happy. When I do good things, I get small pats on the back. But when I broke rules, I got this PhD level lecture about my behavior and punishment that didn't really seem to fit the crime. As an adult, I realized my parents loved me and were proud of me. But at the time, it just seemed like I was one big disappointment. The identity challenges, the constant moving, and always feeling like a failure made the concept of home feel very unsafe. Where does this child find safety? School seemed to be a near mirror image of home. I had some friends, and I was known because I played football, yet the old ghost of El Dorado followed me to Oklahoma. Being educated and articulate and well-behaved was often met with, "You're not black," or "Random white person is blacker than you." On the romantic scene, I was passed up by black girls for not being thug enough or ridiculed for the weird music or movies I watched. Any Rammstein fans in the house? No? Okay. Leave me alone. All right. I dated a few white girls and was made fun of for that. Even the white girls started dumping me because I was too nice. During these years, I learned not all racism has malicious intent. Some racism doesn't see itself as racism. My friends from other races felt it was okay to make racist jokes around me because I wasn't like the other black people. It was common to hear the same jokes over and over. And at some point, I started to tell the racist jokes to beat them to the punch. Because if I tell the joke first, then I don't have to admit that my friends are racist. Where does this child play on the playground? Remember those seeds that I told you were sown in my life when I was exposed to pornography? They began to sprout during this time. During these years, my family had cable TV. This meant I had access to late night HBO and Cinemax, or Skinemax, as I call it. I would stay up late and watch adult content on these channels. Watching these movies and shows were a strange comfort for the life that I could not control. Oddly enough, during this time frame, my family attended a church where I experienced what it was like to have a personal relationship with Jesus. Prior to this, church attendance was just a ritual for me. But in Oklahoma, I met Jesus for myself. My spark for him was real. The church we attended was very diverse. I loved being at church. I loved the diversity. I loved Jesus. But none of that was enough to stop me from seeking adult content. Now, during my 9th grade year, I moved back to Arkansas to live with my mom and other siblings. This meant leaving behind the church that I loved so much. My mom's church didn't have diversity. The church often focused on the material blessings of God, so Jesus took a back seat. We were poor and people knew it, so I never fit in with the cool social circles. Where does this child worship? At 17, I left my mom and siblings and moved in with my white girlfriend and her family. I decided to stop going to church and just pursue pleasure. Jesus, if he was real, was just gonna have to take a back seat. There was this thing called the internet, and I could access full-fledged pornography at blinding 56K speeds. I used pornography as an escape, as a feel-good, and as my only form of education on sex. Remember, I lived with my girlfriend and her family. 2 teenage kids, lots of alone time together. It should come as no surprise to anyone that on the day of our senior prom, we found out we were gonna be parents. But it surprised us. Having a baby meant I wasn't gonna be able to go to an out-of-state college and fulfill my dream of playing college football. After all, I was an all-American tailback. Anytime I wanted to play, my coach would say, "Get your tail back on that bench." As unrealistic as my dream was, it was still my dream. Letting it go brought a lot of grief, and I didn't have the words to express it. So I drowned my sorrows in sexual behavior. Pornography shaped all my ideas about sex and women. Within a few years, my girlfriend and I would have another child and see our relationship crash and burn. All of this was driven by my unrealistic sexual desire and pornography habits. It was all my fault, but you couldn't tell by the way I lived. I just found more women to drown my sorrows in. I wasn't picky. My standard was basically any willing participant, and the trashier she looked, the more I like her. I was trying to fill gaping holes in my life and cope with the life that I could not control. I want to take a break here and explain something to you. Understand that character defects are different from behaviors. For me, my hurts gave rise to my character defects. Those character defects gave rise to my behaviors, and my behavior became my addiction. Several years ago, I had a conversation with God in which he explained to me that when I face a challenge or struggle in life, there are two options. One, I will either choose comfort or I will choose change. Comfort makes me feel better faster, but it's not lasting, and it allows the real problem to rot. Change is not easy. It doesn't feel good while it's happening. However, it addresses the real issue and moves me forward in life. Addiction is our attempt to comfort our uncomfortable feelings. Our behavior will either be driven by our character assets or our character defects. In falling into addiction, I let my defects lead the way. Now back to our regularly scheduled testimony. As my addiction spiraled out of control, its medicating effects on my emotional and social problems began to wear off. The racial conflict was raging like a storm within me. I began to stereotype groups of people who were stereotyping me. Yet I lived my life as an apology to people of other races. I felt like being the nice guy to them would make up for the negative experiences they had with other people from my demographic. I lived out of spite for people, but living spitefully made me just like them. White ladies on elevators would scoot over and clutch their purses when I got on the elevator. I began to question myself. Am I really the bad guy they think I am? This insecurity led me to people pleasing, to fit in. I became a social chameleon. I carried resentments against anybody who rejected me. I was too black for the white folks, too white for the black folks. Where does this injured child in a grown man's body find healing? In 2012, during the 10th year of my long and illustrious college career, do the math, I met a really annoying white girl who stole food from me. When we started dating a few months later, but because she was a church runaway and I was a heathen in heathen's clothing, we found ourselves about to have a baby before I could remember her last name. This prodigal church girl was terrified she was about to have a baby with a black dude she barely knew. So she made the decision to go back to church. Y'all heard that? So she made a decision to go back to church. She said if I wanted to be with her, I would have to come to church too. Otherwise, we could just co-parent our child. What I heard was the girl that was sleeping with me is going to stop sleeping with me if I don't come to church. So I came to church. But when I arrived, I brought my spiritual baggage with me. This church was big, not like the churches I grew up in. This church was full of white people. They baptized somebody and they didn't sing "Take Me to the Water." Can you believe that? But the church grew on me. I softened my heart towards Jesus, then surrendered my life to him. Oh, and also I married that white girl. Just so you know, in marriage, happily ever after is a myth. Marriage is hard. We had some major problems. Even though Jesus was in our hearts, the devil was still in our house. I still watch pornography, but my wife made it very clear she was not interested at all in porn. Porn was part of who I was. How do I let it go? Well, as blessings would have it, our church was starting a recovery ministry called Celebrate Recovery, which is now forever free. Go ahead. I showed up to be part of the worship team, but God had a much bigger plan for me. God brought me to recovery to set me free, heal me, then use me as a messenger of his good news. Recovery became my safe place where I could say, I love Jesus, but I struggle with blank. The 12 steps provided me with a blueprint for healing. A ministry friend of mine said something to me that changed my world. He said that we as men, and more so black men, are allowed by culture to have two emotions, happiness and anger. Any other emotion we express is met with the questioning of our manhood. If I say I'm hurting, culture says, find a woman. If I say I'm scared, culture says, man up. Utilizing step one, I was able to admit that I had feelings other than happiness and anger. In step four, I was able to sort out the parts of my messy life that were mine and what parts were handed to me by others. Addiction does not discriminate, neither does recovery. I found support in an array of colors. Did I mention that my sponsor was an old white guy? His name was John. He taught me the value of accountability. No matter who I complained about to John, he would always ask me the same question. Richard, what did you do? This was a reminder that my actions were about me and that I could not control what anyone else did. Neither following Jesus nor recovery equate to immunity against the struggles in life. They are blueprints for a changed life. Prior to recovery, I applied to medical school. My pre-medical advisors gave me a lot of guidance. There was a lot of, don't wear your hair like this, don't say that, don't bring up these parts of your life. Basically, just don't be who I was. Much of it was racially based. I know this because my white classmates who applied didn't get the same tips, but many of my minority friends did. I didn't get into medical school for reasons that truly were not based on race, but the experience was enough to make me abandon my lifelong dream of being a doctor. Let's fast forward to everyone's favorite year, 2020. I had accomplished a lot in my personal life and my spiritual life. That white girl I married and I had 3 biracial children. Life was going along well for us. However, the outside world seemed to be on fire, literally. The publicizing of killings of unarmed black people by members of law enforcement had driven a wedge in the world we knew. And everyone seemed to be taking sides over it. As a black man who was also trying to be a true follower of Jesus, I found myself in the middle of social turmoil. If I protested, I was considered by some of my friends to be a troublemaker. If I didn't protest, other friends would call me a sellout and tell me that I wasn't militant or angry enough. I wish I could say the church was different, but it wasn't. I lost some friends and brothers and sisters in Christ in all this. I lost a lot of people. It hurt. During that time, many non-black church members and leaders called to check on me. That was a beautiful thing to do. It was the right thing to do. The problem was some of those people have never contacted me since. Just when I thought I could not take any more, I was walking through church one day in some khaki shorts, polo tee, canvas shoes. A lady walked up to me and said, "You look just like one of them white boys." I didn't have the fire to argue. I just smiled and crumbled inside. Does anyone in this world see me, the real me? Where does this Jesus lover worship? Amidst all the chaos, my sponsor, John, died from COVID-19. At some point, though, that blueprint I had been following kicked in. I recalled the conversation I had with God about comfort and change. Richard, are you going to choose comfort and walk away from what you know is true? Or are you going to choose change and stand on this faith that you claim to have? My favorite recovery saying is, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It reminds me that my discomforts won't kill me, but my addiction will. I recall the voice of John, my sponsor, saying to me, Richard, what did you do? I came back to step 6, and it says, we are entirely ready to have God remove our defects of character. I was struggling with the defect of selfishness. I was ready for God to remove it. Yes, I was experiencing a very harsh racial moment, but I had Hispanic friends and Asian friends who were experiencing racial moments. I had white friends who were being attacked for being compassionate to the marginalized. I had other white friends who were being labeled racist for simply not knowing what was going on. I had friends who were pastors in what was probably the hardest year on pastors I've ever seen. Had I checked on any of them? No. I just soaked in my own stink. Had I reached out to talk to those who had criticized me? No. Jesus said in Luke 6:32, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. If I wanted to make it through the chaos, I was gonna have to follow Jesus, and Jesus is love. During this time, a ministry coworker, Darcy, coined a phrase that says, stay in the boat. It was a reference to the story in Matthew 8:23-27, where Jesus calms a storm while he and his disciples are on the boat. If Jesus is in the boat, stay in the boat. Don't worry about the storm all around you. This is where step 7 came into play for me. We humbly ask God to remove our character defects. I had to humble myself in front of God, putting aside my own suffering to make peace with other people. Every soul matters to God. Every soul has to matter to us. I remember asking God one day why I was still experiencing suffering despite doing everything I felt like he was calling me to do. I remember his words so clearly. You're not here because of anything you've done. You're not even here for you. He was reminding me that as I bear his name, there are people watching me. They want to see if I really hold on to this faith that I claim to have, or if it's just smoke and mirrors. A Bible passage I love very much is 2 Corinthians 1:3-4. It says, praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. Sometimes you have to be the healer that you needed when you were hurting. We can comfort others because it is God himself who comforts us. This is why step 12 is my favorite step. I started a habit of calling or texting people in my life to check on them. Now, pause for a second. If you ever got a "how are you" text from me, would you raise your hand for a second if you're in the room, one of those people? Okay. There's some hands up in the room, okay? I'm not trying to point out how good I am. I'm showing you that there's healing in checking on others. Sometimes my SOS shows up on someone else's phone as a text that says, how are you doing? I want to leave you with some encouragements. First, if you don't fit in with the in crowd, maybe you were not made to fit in. Moses, my favorite biblical character, did not fit in with the Hebrews, his own people, nor did he fit in with the Egyptians who raised him. Yet, in the entire Bible, only one fully human being has ever ascended the mountain to meet God face to face, and it was Moses. Don't be afraid to stand out. Next, it's okay to speak up about being hurt. God gave you a spectrum of emotions and feelings. If you weren't supposed to feel them, he would have kept them. All right. Also, it's okay to let people go if they hurt you. Yesterday's loyalty should not be a passageway to today's pain. I lost friends in this story. That's between them and God. Lastly, the 12 steps and Forever Free are not just ways to avoid whatever issue brought you here. They are powerful tools that transform the way we think about things the way we think about things that get in the way between us and Jesus. This transformed thinking opens the door so Jesus can transform the way we live. Not just stopping the bad things, but to live the full life that he gave his life for us to have. All we have to do is show up, work the program, and stay in the boat. I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Thank you.